Recording in progress. Tammy, there we go. Good evening. Welcome to the June 13th, 2022 regularly scheduled work session. Tonight, there are two items on the agenda. Public comment is allowed that is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you are required to fill out a public comment card, and if you are speaking on behalf of an organization, you must fill out an affidavit that you have the authority of said organization. Please remember that this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Public comment will be heard at the beginning of the item. Once the item is called, no other public comment cards will be accepted. Will the city clerk please sound agenda item A?
Mayor, that item is the Wood Road discussion. It's led by our Public Works Director, Ms. Sarah Leaders.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this item is to discuss activity on Wood Road as well as the northern portion of Phillips Circle. It's shown the area highlighted in red on the map on this slide. So it's the road that connects from 372 Birmingham Highway over to Freemanville Road. So tonight, staff has a presentation that will provide some information on some history of this section of roadway related to the trail system. We'll talk about some of the shared use and multimodal usage of the roadway. Then we'll be available for questions during council discussion as well as before and after public comment on this presentation. So the couple items we're going to go through on these slides are first the trail system, kind of an overview of the history of how that was established, the planning history, some of the inventory within the trail system that was recently added, the gravel road designations as part of that trail system. Then look at the current conditions of these two sections of roadway that just showed you as related to signage and parking. We'll share recent speed study information as well as speed limit information on the speed limit on the roads, provide some findings related to codes and standards, what we've discussed with the local road safety plan, and then Chief Austin will talk about some of the police data associated with these areas, and then we'll move into discussion and questions. So first up, the trail system. We have about a 15-year history of planning items related to trails in the city. Started in 2007 with the adoption of the Milton Trail Plan, which was July of 2007 that was adopted. In 2019, May of 2019, there was a work session called the Community Conversations on Wood Road, where some of the items we're going to talk about tonight were mentioned, as well as some other concerns. So that was a date we wanted to highlight as a item related to this, again, this area, this section of roadway. In 2019 and on in through 2021, there were some minor modifications made in the Phillips Circle area related to parking. We'll show some pictures from 2019 and then current conditions. In 2020, the Community Trail Prioritization Plan was adopted, and that effort really began after that community conversation work session back in 2019. In late 2021 and earlier this year, we've been looking at what we're calling the multimodal gravel roads as a focus area of our local road safety plan. And then wanted to highlight too, so far in fiscal year 2022, some additions to our trail inventory, which include Lackey Green Space, the reopening of some additional trails at Providence Park, and then the Milton City Park and Preserve. This slide shows a clip from the 2007 trail plan. And that plan was heavily shaped by a nine-member citizen committee that was very involved in developing that trail plan. And the idea with the phase one of that plan was that 9.53 miles of gravel roads would form the core network of that plan. And the slide here states that, in effect, it's an already established network of bicycle, pedestrian, and equestrian trails that are compatible for the most part with local low-speed automobile traffic. Another thing to highlight on this slide is that the committee recommended that the gravel roads in the core network be marked with Milton Trail signs and that they remain a gravel surface and the speed limit's limited to 15 miles an hour. In 2017, as part of the trail blueprint, the number of gravel roads was slightly reduced down to 8.7 miles of gravel roads from the 9.5 that were on the previous slide. And this really focused around looking at where community facilities were from parks and schools and looking at the gravel roads in those areas, as well as some on-street facilities as well. This map just shows the gravel roads that were part of that blueprint, but there's another map that has the entire network, which includes some side paths and sidewalks as well. So now looking to the current conditions of Wood and that portion of Phillips Circle. So we did a sign inventory of any signs related to trail usage along this stretch of roadway. And all the circles pinpoint different signs. There's some regulatory signs, stop signs, or curve signs, but these just wanted to highlight where we have trail signage, where we have speed limits. We have some of the park ordinance signs, and then we have a handful of these, we call them yard type signs. They're just a low to the ground mounted. You can see in this picture on the top left, the height of it compared to the trail signage. So this is just an inventory of what is currently existing signage-wise along these sections of roadway. So we have 6 of the 15-mile-an-hour signs, 6 Milton Trail. Only 5 of those have the share of the road subplate. Have 4 of the yard signs that talk about some of the other trails. 3 pets on leash, 2 park ordinance, and then 2 that talk about the new facility at the former Milton Country Club. Now moving into parking. So the top left picture is from 2019. At that time, there were about 7 perpendicular parking spaces, so they're considered head-in parking spaces, and part of those were actually located outside the right-of-way. Following that community conversation, as part of the gravel road maintenance and through our maintenance crews, we converted those head-in parking into parallel spaces that actually fit within the right-of-way. So move the wheel stops or the timber markings to, again, keep cars parking inside the right-of-way. The 2 pictures well, let me start with the one at the bottom. This is the approximate footprint of available roadside parking. This is Freemanville Road. So as you enter, there's about 3 parallel spaces here. And those are the ones that are clearly defined with curb stops. And then we have a section that's a little bit of a wider shoulder. The road's about 25 feet wide in that area. So there is available parking on that shoulder. And that represents this additional area in red. It's a total of about 380 feet, and that would accommodate about 19 cars if they were to park very closely like a typical parallel parking space. Another thing I wanted to highlight on this slide is these locations of these 2 fire hydrants do somewhat create that delineation of where the spaces are. So this one is in the this island between the defined spaces and the wider shoulder. And then this hydrant is at the far end. I did want to show this picture as well that shows that Google Street View picked this one up, but that there is parking that even occurs beyond that widened area. A few other pictures related to parking and some of the minor improvements that I referenced. One was while vehicles were parking here, some were actually still trying to pull head into this area. And again, to delineate where the right-of-way is to protect this property owner's fence, built up a small berm. This picture shows, the top middle shows where the berm was initially graded in, and then this is it. The bottom middle is the current. This was taken today, showing that it's grassed now and that it is still providing that barrier and protection of private property. These are some other pictures that were taken just today at the other two ends. So this is the end closest to Freemanville on the left-hand side of the screen, and the right-hand side is that the further end and that kind of the end of that widened area. Next, I wanted to talk about the recent traffic study and the speed limit. So Wood Road has been on the radar permit for several years now at 25 miles an hour. And I believe that is the minimum enforceable radar speed that can be applied for. The road is posted at 15 miles an hour, again, as part of that trail recommendations. And our enforceable speed is based on the radar approved speed limit. So to enforce it radar, it's enforceable 10 miles an hour above that radar approved speed limit. And this graphic on the right, I'll explain in a minute, that relates to some of those speed buckets. So we collected traffic data very recently. The police department set up traffic counts from April 27th to May 1st. So just very recent data, and looked at average daily traffic. So we did a weekday and a weekend average. You can see what those numbers were: 264 in the weekday and 130 weekend. We didn't differentiate between the speeds weekday and weekend. We looked at that just as a total, and the average was 19 miles an hour. And the 85th percentile speed, and that means where 15% of the cars are going faster than that speed and 85% are going that speed or slower, was 25 miles an hour. And then back to our enforceable percentage, that's going to be the number of cars that were going over 36 miles an hour. So again, that was the 10 miles an hour over our radar permitted number, and that during that time period came up to 4 vehicles with the top speed at 43 miles an hour. And the graphic on the right illustrates some of this, and the shading is more like representative of what we would typically see, where we would expect about half the cars to be going at the speed limit. We've done a lot of traffic counts throughout the city, and that is pretty standard. The 85th would be typically kind of between this yellow and red area, where maybe 15% of the cars could be in that enforceable range. But these are the percentages based on the data collected for Wood Road. So 27% were going 15 or below. 72.5% were going 16 to 35 miles an hour. And only 4 vehicles during that time were going 36 and up. So some of the findings related to what is in our ordinance currently. We have a section of the ordinance called Trail Standards, and in that is a section on gravel roads. And this is very much from the trail plan. It was almost exactly like I stated on the first slide, that the existing gravel roads provide an established network of bicycle, pedestrian, and equestrian trails. And then they're designated as part of the map that determines the trail system, shall remain gravel surface and may include trail signs at each end. Another piece of this section of the ordinance is the typical sections for the trails. And I highlighted the one here for the gravel road section. And the intent in the ordinance is that the gravel road surface is the trail surface. There's no separation. It's a shared street type facility. Ordinance on right-of-way just states that the city holds streets in the trust for the convenience and use of the public at large, and it's our duty to keep them safe and in a suitable condition for passage of persons and transportation of commodities. It's public way, open and free to anyone who has occasion to pass along it on foot or with any kind of vehicle. And that's going to be any kind of vehicle that's, again, permitted in another section of the code. And the primary objective is for public passage, kept open and unobstructed for that purpose. Our ordinance on parking says vehicles may park on roads of subsequent width unless specifically prohibited by signage. The city may regulate and prohibit parking of any type of vehicle on any public road. And the Public Works Department has a policy on what we look at for no parking zones. Okay, and then some of the items from the local road safety plan. This is an ongoing plan, and part of that is to come up with strategies to look at some of the emphasis areas as well as the focus areas. And multimodal gravel roads are a focus area of the plan. And these are 5 different ideas that our consultant helped develop as part of that plan as some things we could look at doing on some of these gravel roads where uses are shared. First is some signage, whether it's defining who yields to who. It could be identifying what side of the road the different uses are intended to be on, some education of the rules of the road to walk on the left facing traffic, then better defining parking areas or no parking areas, and potentially designating as residential traffic only. And now I'll let Chief Austin come talk about some of the police data that we've got to share.
Thank you, Sarah. Greetings, Mayor, members of council. So looking at our aggregate data over the last few years, as you can see, total, we spent a lot of time on Wood Road with almost 3,000 residential checks. We've had just a few crashes there, traffic stops, 39. Qualify that a little bit. Whenever officers do stops out on Freemanville Road, sometimes cars will pull into Phillips Circle, what have you. So if it comes from one of the larger roads onto one of those, it's still counted in that area. The calls for service, we've had 205 calls for service. Qualify that just a little bit. The 73% correction, 22% of the calls for service consisted of alarm calls. Other calls for service contain welfare checks, medical calls, phone reports, juvenile calls, public disturbances such as barking dogs. So those are the typical types of calls that we see there. Traffic complaints, 11 of the 15 of the reported traffic complaints consisted of parking, which, as Sarah touched on, has improved greatly over time with the improvements that were made. Parking citations, we've only issued a couple of parking citations. Typically, in a situation like this, we like to educate our citizens rather than just go out and write a lot of tickets. So if we could find folks and have them move their cars to park them legally, that it was more the approach that we took with our citizens. And then incidents, we've had 20 total incident reports over the time frame. So some other considerations. So we do have some other trails that are opening up, Lackey Road, Providence, the MCPP, and the signage has been out, letting folks know about those. There's, as Sarah talked about, we're looking at maybe streamlining the signage up there. There's quite a bit of signage. So as Sarah said, we've looked for opportunities to perhaps streamline those a bit and help folks out with that. And another part of the conversation staff had was perhaps getting some input from the trail committee. The Milton Trails Advisory Committee is forming now. So we would like some feedback from them if possible. And with that, we'll open it up for discussion or questions that you may have.
Thanks, Chief. So before we have public comment, any questions for staff? Okay. Tammy, will you call public comment, please?
Yes, I do. I'd like to invite Mr. Brian Maloney to the podium.
All right, thank you so much. We certainly appreciate everyone's attention to this particular matter. As the original chairman of the Milton Trail Committee, when we first looked at rolling the gravel roads into the system, the city had no money, and it was a great way for us to preserve these historical elements of our community and also, kind of launch the recreational aspect of trails in Milton. The trailheads were never intended to be at the roads, though. The trailheads were always intended to be at the local schools. And, we've talked before about trying to set up some interagency coordination on that and stuff, but that would be a real simple fix for getting the cars off the road, because especially as you come off Freemanville onto Phillips Circle, that's a very just dangerous area and stuff like that. And if we could shift all of those cars over to Summit or Birmingham Falls, then that eliminates that. I love some of the concepts of signs, but it's also important to make sure that we preserve that rural nature and not overload the signage. And also with the parking, I'm so glad that council has the ability to make any rules on parking, because this really is a linear park. I mean, we can't just think of it as a gravel road and all rules apply, but this is a linear park, and it's a narrow linear park with horses, people walking, pushing strollers. So we really can't have cars parking along the side. So, great. Thank you.
Brian, will you state your name and address for the record?
Sure, I'm so sorry. Brian Maloney, 14430 Wood Road.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to next invite Mr. David Peters to the podium.
Good evening. Dave Peters, 14475 Wood Road. Little history, we've been on Wood Road for 22 years. And the difference between Wood Road 22 years ago and Wood Road today is pretty stark. It's a very different road. When we moved there, the people who walked and rode on Wood Road were residents largely, as well as cut-through traffic. But today, with the volume of traffic on Wood Road and the type of traffic on Wood Road, you really have to stop and ask yourself, with that volume and that differences in the traffic, can it be a road and a trail at the same time? And can it be that safely? And that really is the key here. I really worry that with the different traffic that's on that road and the volume, that you really are risking a serious accident potentially. So safety, I think, is a key question here. Would hope that the council would consider that strongly as you talk about the future of Wood Road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Ms. Brooke Hunter, I invite you to the podium.
Brooke Hunter, 14680 Wood Road, actually Hunter's Christmas Tree Farm. So some of the traffic is our problem. We may not be doing it any longer because the kids are getting tired. But we've been there since 1983. If you ever want the history of what we fought for all these years to keep it gravel, we will certainly give it to you. I agree with the idea of safety. Signage is always odd. Where people walk is always odd. We do try when we are residentially going down the road to slowly go by people, but boy, do they whiz by us when we walk. We know that 15 miles an hour was always told to us by the police. It could never be enforced, but we put the signs up anyway. So I hope you will know that we want to keep what we have. If you do want to know the history since 1983, I have a lot of history. And I don't know why you spent that much money for such a wonderful display, but we hope you will use our tax money wisely.
Thank you.
And Mayor, I'd like to invite Mr. David Shaw to the podium.
I agree with all of them. Hi, I'm David Shaw at 14600 Wood Road. I live almost directly in the middle of the road at the little one-lane bridge. So it's really tight there. But in talking about the safety, that is first and foremost. And, you know, if I've been there since 95, I've had to build infrastructure in order to keep people from falling in the creek or bathing their children in the creek or feeding their horses in the creek because that was my driveway. And they were just trespassing, but using it. So infrastructure was built, a fence, a gate, and other things in order to keep people at bay. And the problem is the public looks at this not as a trail, they are looking at this and acting as if it's a park. Walking side by side, 5 people side by side, taking up the whole road, some with their headphones in, others looking at their phones because they're all addicted to their phones and not paying any attention to traffic. I drive 2 different types of vehicles. One of them happens to be a Tesla. They can't hear me. I'm not going to beat my horn. And that's the walking traffic problem. The other problem with traffic there is you have schools of teams of mountain bikers, and there might be 8 or 10 of them, and they're going 30 or 40 miles per hour down the road and coming up over the hills and having a great time, okay? Rather dangerous, though. And we've seen accidents happen, and we've seen people on their horses on the road spooked by vehicles and other things that just are not normal. I mean, it's not a trail, it's turned into a park, you know. I never thought I was going to be living in a park. And you took away my country club. And I think that is a perfect use of that type of facility where you have a lot of walking trails, you have plenty of parking, you probably have police protection or observation going on, and you don't have to worry about cars on a walkway. And that's, you know, back to the safety issue, because it's just a matter of time before some little child gets run over in some fashion, because some of those vehicles that are going 40 and 50 miles an hour are vendors driving in and out, and they're not going to obey any speed limit. So it is a safety issue. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter, did you want to say anything, or did you want to speak?
Gordon Hunter, 14680 Wood Road. We're kind of curious as to what originated this discussion tonight. Are there problems with Wood Road besides, safety concerns, which we're all concerned, but we're kind of curious as exactly what started this discussion tonight. From my perspective, we live off the road a bit, so we're not fronting the road. Our home is set back, so I don't see daily a lot of the issues that go on. But when I go up down the road, I can certainly see some of the issues. And we really know that people enjoy walking on the road. And sometimes there are groups of families, and sometimes they're spread out on the road walking. But usually they acknowledge that, and they'll get. I feel like people are generally pretty polite in their behavior on the road. But anyway, we just want to know, and perhaps when you get a little discussion going here, let us know what the issues are that we haven't been given advance notice exactly of what's up with Wood Road. But we agree though that it's a real good thing for the community. And Wood Road, when it ties into Phillips and then also ties into Summit and Brittle, it's a nice long piece. It's about 1.5 miles to 2 miles long on Wood to Phillips. And that's a good walk. People park on the side there, and that's easy enough. I'm not sure if people go up over to Brittle and onto Summit Hill School and all that stuff. But anyway, we're as residents, we've really enjoyed Wood Road. I think I've seen adequate policing on the road at times, going back and forth. I think it's a real plus for the community, and we're pleased that it's developed into that kind of a thing. We're proud of it, and we hope that we can all keep it up with proper signage and patrolling and all that. But thank you very much. We're also pleased that a trash receptacle was put on the parking area on the east side on Phillips. That's been a big help. We don't see very much litter on the road. We go walking the road, we usually carry a little bag with us and pick up trash as we see it. Of course, we're designated, I think, as as a group to pick up trash on the road, but actually we haven't seen that much. I think one thing I got to tell you about that's kind of funny though is that when people bring their dogs on the road, they have the little plastic bags to collect the droppings of the dogs. But what's really funny is people put them in the plastic bags and they'll just drop on the road and leave them there, which is really an aggravation. I'd rather just not even use the bag because the rain and so forth will wash things away. But anyway, by and large, I think people are enjoying the Wood Road and Brittle and all that. So we thank you for supporting it. It's been a positive thing for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes
that
the
it?
public comment.
Thank you. Any council discussion, questions for staff? Rick?
Yeah, I've got I guess for a little bit of history, I was on council back in 2007 when we designated this. And like Brian had mentioned, when we formed the city, we really didn't have any parks or walking trails. Providence Park was closed down because of contamination and toxic waste. Birmingham Park really didn't have specific trails. We didn't have it out at Bell Memorial, where now we have a trail. So we've added a lot of trails around the city. And originally it was I think we designated this because we wanted to have something when we formed the city so we could have some recreation. That was how it originally came about, part of what we did. The concern I've got with this is not that it's not beautiful. It is beautiful. It is a nice place to walk. I guess we've heard some of the people talk is more of the safety concern. And Ken, maybe you can talk a little bit about liability and issues that potentially would be there for the city if we have it designated as a park and as a trail, which is what the signs say today.
Right. So I have communicated with some of you, some staff, and maybe a council respect to this, and I'm going to be somewhat circumspect simply because we're talking about my legal guidance, and really that's more for the council with respect to my underlying thoughts. I will simply say this. County immunity and city immunity are very different. County sovereign immunity and some of those immunities that accompany government are much stronger with a county than they are with the municipality, and goes to how basically the two entities are created. A city will have liability exposure for both two sorts. I don't mean to make this a primer on governmental liability, but basically there's proprietary issues and there's governmental issues. The creation of a road and a trail system is a governmental issue. But cities, there is a specific statute that effectively states that public right-of-ways, public thoroughfares have to be kept safe. There's no companion like that in counties. And so it does leave an avenue of available liability exposure open to the cities that you may not find in a county context. Whether or not the city could be sued for a vehicular accident involving a pedestrian, involving Wood Road or any other part of your trail system that may be cojoined with part of your public right-of-way system, the answer is yes. But as we all know, just because someone can sue you doesn't mean anything. People can sue you for anything. The question is whether you be liable for it. And that is a much more fact-intensive question, which is why obviously I was listening to staff as they were going through some of the issues with respect to, for instance, the 85% metric with respect to speed. I think I heard the 85% metric was 85% of the traffic is at 25 miles per hour or less. I also heard the posted speed limit was 15 miles an hour, which is, by the way, very small. And I'll also tell you that a lot of people don't appreciate this, but unless it's a gated community or a gated subdivision, every road in every subdivision in Milton is a public right-of-way as well. And I don't have to tell you all, but there's a lot of people that walk inside the interior roads of their neighborhood streets. They have block parties, they have barbecues, they have other things within the right-of-way. However, this one is a little unique in that it is not only a public right-of-way, but it is advertised as a trail for walking. So you are necessarily advertising it as to have a dual purpose. So, to the extent that the question is can there be some enhanced review from a liability perspective because of its dual purpose? Yeah, I think that's true. The information I'm hearing this evening doesn't make me think that it is a significant liability exposure, but I do think that it probably has greater, at least risk, than just a pure roadway. because of the dual nature of what we're advertising on it. The fact that there's no demarcated lane of travel, that it apparently that the entirety of the roadway is used for both pedestrian and vehicular traffic, those sorts of things. So I want to stop right there. I provided staff and at least a council member some of the criteria that I would uniquely look at in making an assessment. I am informed this evening by the fact that heretofore we have not had an instance of a motor vehicle hitting a pedestrian, and heaven forbid we never have that. But it's something we should probably think about. And I'll answer any other questions you may have, maybe in a more environment where I can expose some of my legal theories with a little more candor.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ken or staff? Carol, and then Paul.
Chief and Sarah, how were the vehicles per day counted? Well, what was the methodology?
The device used to count those is, and police can talk a little bit about how it's mounted, but it will pick up both directions of travel, and then it's put in place for 5 days. So it just collects the number of vehicles and the speed they're going.
Okay, so if somebody were to park at either end, well, I'll rephrase the question. You would have to drive through to go over the counter in order to be counted. You could park and turn and go the other direction, right? You wouldn't necessarily be counted.
Right.
What I'm getting at is, I think the numbers are misleading because it's kind of impossible to, because I know that the few times I've turned and gone the other way. I've gone many times. But there's no count on number of people, because lots of people could be in one car, or people could park elsewhere and walk over at a school or something like that. So it could be a whole lot more people and a lot more cars representing those people. So I'm just pointing that out because I think we're sort of colored by that number, and that number might not have, in my opinion, might not have as much relevance. Because we're not able to do how many parked cars are actually there and how many people they represent. So that's one point. And then the other point I would have for you, Ken, so certainly it would be nice if we knew what the whole of the residents of Wood Road wanted to do. What does the majority want to do, and what would that look like? But even if the council were to de-designate this as a trail, then how do we change behavior? How is behavior changed other than by luring people elsewhere, because it's still a public road?
It is, but I mean, even within a public road system, for instance, we have public roads that probably have a dedicated speed limit of, say, 45 miles an hour, just as an example. If pedestrians were routinely walking along that road, someone is going to get injured because of the speeds. Now, you may say, well, Ken, isn't that just a function of people self-correcting? And you wouldn't be wrong. Most people don't enjoy walking along a roadway with a speed limit of 45 miles an hour because it is inherently dangerous. Some roadway systems, however, you cannot walk on them. Go try walking down Georgia 400 and you won't make it very long. So I do think we have some sort of arrows in our quiver with respect to that. But you're not wrong. There might be some mitigation steps that could be taken if we wanted to enhance sort of the safety equation with respect to Wood Road. But again, those are ones I would want to speak to you offline about as well.
So basically, people who walk would have to be scared to walk there, or else their behavior wouldn't change?
No, I mean, again, we're talking about polar extremes right now. Right now, we're inviting it. And I think
No, I understand
that's the
Yeah.
point I'm making. If it was not part of the trail system, does that mean that they would no longer walk there? Probably not, but there are probably things we could do to make that a less attractive option.
Paul?
Sarah, do we know, either anecdotally or with count, what the vehicle traffic is and/or the pedestrian traffic since the new Milton City Park and Preserve has been opened? Has it had an impact on the frequency or volume of use?
We don't have any pedestrian count numbers, but we do have some old traffic count data from 2010, and let's see if I can find that. We were looking at a average daily of just over 200, 210 weekday average back in 2010. And another thing to consider too with the traffic counts is because there's an entrance and exit off of Birmingham and Freemanville, whether you assumed, half the vehicles would be using each one, and where the count station was relative to the center of the midpoint of the road could have some impact on that too. But from a volume standpoint, I think it's slightly lower than what we were looking at. Actually, the weekdays slightly higher and the weekends slightly lower than what we were seeing in 2010.
Yeah, unfortunately, like the hard data, because there are so many variables, it's hard to read. Is there cut-through traffic? Is there more cut-through traffic during the schools? School calendar, is there less because it's at school is out? Population has grown, so you would expect traffic count to go up, but if you open the park and the traffic or the population has gone down because they're using the park, the new park instead of Wood Road. And it's just, I was hoping for some more pivotal data to sort of hang our hat on with that. There was something else I was going to ask you and I lost it. It'll come to me.
The other thing, I guess, related to the volume too is in 2010, there may have been some intersections that weren't improved. And so during certain times, the gravel road may have been used as a bypass around some of those pinch points. So changes in traffic patterns too may have changed any number that might have been using it as a cut through.
I recall my question, the other one, and that is Wood Road is advertised as part of the trail system, and it's had probably the greatest use of all the gravel roads that we have. Have we had other instances where we've had to take a hard look at? I'm not aware of any. Like if you look at Mountain Road or even Summit and Brittle, you don't hear much about Summit and Brittle compared to Wood Road. Can you draw any comparisons as to why one is more or less of an issue than the other?
I know none of the others have had the Milton Trail signposting or the reduced speed limit. When Wood Road when that signage was put in, I think in 2013, maybe it's been a while, but that it was initially done as, well, let's do kind of a pilot study of this one. Let's see what the lower speed and the actual signage does. But we'd never moved forward with any of the others yet.
Okay.
Steve, what direction are you looking for council tonight? I'll get you, Jan.
This was, excuse me, this was spurred on from a council discussion. So staff came here prepared, hopefully to be able to at least set the stage for y'all to have a discussion. We've had some complaints over the years regarding some of the things you heard tonight, the way people span out across Wood Road. We've had some complaints regarding four-wheelers, things along those lines. And this was just an opportunity for y'all to discuss and potentially give staff some direction or decide, do you want to leave things status quo? Do you want to test out some new things? Do you want to hand this to the newly created Trails Committee? I mean, it's just an opportunity to have that discussion.
All right. Jan?
Yeah, Sarah, I was wondering, to me, when you showed the picture of all the signs, to me, that just looked like signage overload. I mean, are there so many signs there that, people just ignore them and that maybe they all need to be taken down and redone? To me, it just looks like there's just too much.
Right. When we first looked at the map that showed all the signage on the road and then started picking out which ones were the trail related, as you're driving through it, doesn't jump out quite as much as it does on a map. But yeah, I believe there could be a streamlining of the signage and, at the ends, getting a consistent message, and then maybe in the middle, just a few reminders. And the yard signs were intended to be just a temporary measure, and I think some of them have been up for a little while, so, relooking at those, but they serve the purpose of providing those other location opportunities.
One other follow-up, and I'm not sure if you're the right person to answer this or not, but if we eliminated the parking that's along Wood Road, would that reduce the number of people that are doing things that we don't really want them to do? I mean, is it possible to get them to go to the schools to park for those that just want to walk and are serious about just walking? I mean, I don't know if removing the parking there is of help or not.
So the way the ordinance on limiting parking is go back to that. So the city may regulate and prohibit parking on any type of vehicle on any public road. So we do have the ability under this ordinance, if we did want to completely take out the Phillips Circle parking area, to do it through this ordinance. Our internal policy has been, though, that there would be some sort of public safety reason behind prohibiting parking, either during certain hours or because of curvature or visibility, or something related to that the parking would be causing a safety concern, because vehicles are allowed to park on public roads. And again, this says that we can regulate it as a city, but our, again, policy has been if it's public safety driven, if that makes sense. But
Carol, and then I got a question for Steve.
So if council were willing, and residents of Wood were willing at some level, it's a little hard to tell. I mean, I understand everybody's concerned about safety, but then there seems to be a departure as to whether there's a net benefit or a net issue with it. And that's, again, I really don't like to adjudicate anything for neighborhoods, but if we were to detrail Wood, can it be, and again, I'm not sure exactly how that changes usage, because you were a bit mysterious about that, but can we retrail it if the folks of Wood prefer that? I mean,
Yes.
we can do.
Yes, either
and-
one.
And they would have the power for that input, but it seems to me if the folks are tired of something, then we might be able to try something else for relief.
Right.
And see if that relief is then given, and if it's not, and people decide they like it the other way. I'm not trying to speak for you. I'm really trying to figure out where you all are. I know where a couple of you are, but again, so we have latitude
Right.
to adjust along the way. What we don't have is a magic wand on the safety or the numbers. And I don't know how to improve that unless we're vigilant. We have somebody there all the time. Signage is sort of a byproduct. Behaviors are ingrained. I mean, Wood Road is iconic. Behaviors are ingrained. It's not going to change with signage. So, unless there's an immediate fine and somebody's there to give it out. So anyway, just stream of thoughts for your consideration to try to
And I
help
got
one
one
way or the
question
other.
for Steve. When are we appointing the Trails Committee?
20th.
I think we're aiming for the next meeting.
Next meeting? Okay.
Yes.
Councilman Cookerly, I mean, to your point, first of all, I don't mean to be opaque or mysterious, but I agree with your characterization. Just because it's a difficult issue, I could sit and debate with myself all day. So we take away the parking, that's great. So they'll park on the shoulder in the grass and not use the parking. So have we accomplished anything? However, can government take action that sets sort of an expectations of its citizens, and will they over time begin to honor that? It's been done before. I do think you have almost complete authority with respect to sort of what you incentivize on this roadway. Right now, as we've talked about, you're incentivizing two uses, obviously low-speed motor vehicle, low speed. In fact, lower than it is in most internal subdivision streets at 15. I'm used to sort of in the 20 to 25 mile per hour in most subdivisions. As well as, I think someone said it was more of a lateral park, which was an interesting term that I heard, but I understood the sentiment. But to your point, I don't know that there's any action that staff is asking you to make tonight, except to do exactly what you just talked about doing, which is understanding the usages. I'm not hearing anything right now that suggests to me this is, for instance, one of my favorite trails in the Smokies, Mount LeConte on a Saturday, where literally thousands of people are on that trail, and any police officer in the chief's position or Sarah would come in and say, this is not compatible with pedestrian traffic. I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing something less than that, much less, but nonetheless, something that staff wanted to bring to your attention.
Paul?
Yeah, I want to echo some of the thoughts that have been shared and sort of share my own dilemma and where we are tonight about giving any profound recommendations. And that is, I spent a couple of meaningful hours with Amy and David Peters a couple of months ago, and Amy gave a very compelling picture of the things that we should have some concerns about. There was pictures of families not too far from a road grader when we were doing the maintenance on the road, or in some instances we might have considered closing the road. I think Amy shared with me some of the biggest offenders are some of the school buses going up and down the roads and the speeds that come with that. We heard from Dr. Maloney tonight about the prospect of parking elsewhere than maybe on the road. And I don't know where we stand with the relationship with Fulton County Schools to be able to use those parking areas, but I know that it probably is restricted during the course of the day when students would be there. So we haven't necessarily solved the problem there because some of the walkers are going to be there during school hours. And so what's rolling around in my head is I'm not hearing anything I can hang my hat on except for a pretty good list of concerns that I'm not sure we can, with one wave of the wand, as Carol had suggested, make go away. Reducing the parking may be part of the solution, but if you've got one walker in harm's way, is that any different than 5 walkers in harm's way? Offering other parking solutions doesn't necessarily diminish the number of walkers either. So have we solved the problem or not? So where I thought we might get a clearer message tonight, I think we've done a good job of airing some of the concerns, but it looks like we have some more work to do to figure out what of those on the list of concerns are the biggest priority, and then maybe engage the community with the benefit of the Trails Committee. I wasn't planning on going there tonight. I wasn't going to defer to them, thinking we might get a more clear-cut message. But I do believe there's probably more value than I was originally going to give for this particular issue that's coming up for Wood Road. And I look forward to all the benefits that will come from the Trails Committee for all that they'll bring to us as a city and the reason for their recreation. But I'm not sure that I'm prepared to give anything profound tonight on Wood Road.
I'll kind of echo your thoughts. I was kind of leaning on the Trails Committee to have that community engagement that we all kind of want. And this could be their first priority item, really.
Yeah, this is a good discussion of things we have to have our concerns raised on. I'm not sure I can bring anything profound for conclusion tonight.
Right.
Yeah, I think where I stand is we obviously want to honor what the residents want as far as that. But I think we've got a responsibility as a city, as a governing body, to make sure that if we're providing trails, designating things as trails, whether it's adding sidewalks or whatever, I think we need to make sure that it is in fact safe. I go back to how this started. We had 16,000 people in the city of Milton in 2006. When we formed, we now have over 40,000. So, and plus, as this has become known, it's not just the citizens of Milton that are using this. We're having people come from Roswell all over. So it's not like we're taking care of Milton residents. It's not set up just for that. But I will just tell you from my personal experience, and over the last year, I've driven that road a lot because I had a job that would take me back and forth on that. I've had instances as recent as today, as I was driving down the road, there was someone jogging in the middle of the road. He had earbuds in, and I slowed down. I went far to the left of the road on Wood Road. The guy swerved into my lane. He's never even moved over. A couple weeks ago, I was traveling there. There was a family of four, two little children, and they were walking down Wood Road, coming from Phillips Circle. They were not holding the hands of the children. I was going very slow. I moved over, probably going about 5 to 10 miles per hour. I moved wide. The little girl ran out in front of my car. I hit the brakes. I'm being extremely careful. I don't live there. And it's hard to look at a study, a traffic study, and say, well, this is the behavior. The behavior changes depending on who's out there walking and traveling. I've taken pictures of people spread across the whole road. My concern is when we designate it, we've designated it for a reason. It was good intent when we started because we didn't have, and it is very beautiful. It's a beautiful road. But is the designation by the city, is it appropriate to have it set up where people think it's a park and think it's a trail? It really is a road. And the people that live there, some of them may be okay with that. They may think that it's nice to see people, but I think we've got a responsibility long-term to say, is this the right use? I've done some reading on multimodal streets and trails, and I guess that's a question for Sarah, is would this be something you would design as a multimodal trail as it is right now? And I'm not looking for a final decision tonight because I know we're not at that point, but I think we need to seriously look. I know a few years ago we had an instance where someone's horse, a very expensive horse, got spooked by a dog and the horse ran into the fence. They had to put the horse down. Those people subsequently left Wood Road because of the cost of what happened with their horse. So those may be isolated incidents, but the question is, and that's where I come back to liability, are we not encouraging people to walk on that road? I'm not going to stop. We can't stop people from walking on any road. But when we designate it a certain way, I think we have a mindset when someone goes on the road, they think this is a trail, this is a park. There's signs that say that. That's where my concern enters in, is do we want to change that designation? Yes, and by putting parking there, I don't think the residents requested as a whole, the city to do the scraping of the side of the road when we formed the parking. I think that happened in 2016 when people were parking in a different way. So those are kind of my concerns. Having witnessed and having had children and people walk right out in front of me, you can say, well, that doesn't happen very often. All it takes is one time. So, Sarah, I guess I would ask you, if you were designing a multimodal road, would this be the way, is this the way you would design it? Is this standard? Is this what we see from an industry standpoint?
So shared use streets are kind of a new term in the industry, and they're typically targeted at urban areas where you have commercial uses or residents that are so close to the roadway. I did find a couple different documents that talked about kind of those standards for shared use streets, and it sets the priority as the pedestrian of that travel way. But it does still accommodate vehicles. It recommends, bringing certain infrastructure or things in to kind of break up the straight segment of roadway. So there's components that you would look at if you were doing a design from scratch kind of shared street versus this case where it's an existing roadway with existing features. The low volume is another characteristic. Low volume and low speed are very important in the shared street standard. Typically, one of the numbers I found was you wouldn't want to have more than 100 cars in your afternoon peak hour, and at 260 a day, we're likely not hitting that threshold at any point during the day. The low speed in the 10 to 15 mile an hour range is what's recommended. Definitely less than 20, which our average is, but but there are outliers in our speed data too that were in the 40s. So hopefully that was enough information that there are standards out there, and there would be standards for a new facility versus a transforming a existing street. So there'd be more research to dig into, and again, I couldn't find any examples of a rural shared street, and who knows, we could be setting a trend and establishing what could build into creating a safe space in the more rural environment.
Did we at one point in time do a survey of how we could make that road different or safer? Was that something we did a few years back?
We did a full survey of the roadway to delineate the right-of-way, all the roadside features, more as an effort to collect the existing and to see what it would take to even do a parallel facility, which was that was part of the initial blueprint that was taken off of the priority as the community prioritization plan came forward.
Okay, because I think the concern, I guess the challenge with Wood Road and any other extremely rural area is if you tried doing a side trail next to it, you'd have to end up purchasing land, but you also would change kind of the whole look of what makes it beautiful to begin with.
That wasn't a component of the shared street. It's typically one without curb or any kind of a separated path. It's really more the idea that all uses occur across the same space.
Okay.
Is council okay with, we can let the trail committee kind of take a look at this at their first meeting and get some citizen input from everybody? Is council okay with that, or would y'all like to go in a different direction? Good. Is that good direction with you, Steve?
I've got what I need.
Okay. Rick, do you have anything?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is if we do that, let's just make sure that we educate them on what's happened, what the history is, so it's not starting from scratch with them not really understanding some of the issues, some of the concerns that have been raised, in fairness to the people that do have concerns that live on the street, as well as people who would still like to see it continue. But I think we need to, again, take a look at how would we make it safer, because I guess my last comment is, when I've traveled there, almost everybody walks with their back to traffic, and they walk with traffic, which means they don't hear you, they don't see you if they've got headphones in. And again, that's the concern with it being designated as the way it is today.
Well, we have two trail committee members sitting in the audience tonight, and I think y'all have a lot of work ahead of y'all, so we appreciate y'all. You good? Okay. Thank you. Tammy, if you please call the next item.
The next item, Mayor, is Providence Park Restroom Project Update, presented by Mr. Tom McElveen, Parks and Rec Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. All right, what I have for you this evening is an update pertaining to the restroom at Providence Park. This evening, we're looking to get some guidance on moving forward with a restroom facility at the park. Today, I'll briefly fill you in on the history, then go into the proposed design and location, financial impacts, along with staff recommendation. So let's dive into the history. I'll be brief. In the end of 2018, we applied and were awarded a grant through DNR totaling $100,000 with a city match of also matching at least $100,000. In 20 to 21, through those 2 years, we had designs created for that bathroom, kind of spec'd out to what we had put in our application to DNR. And when we took the plans out to bid, the construction came in at over $1 million for the restroom. That was way over budget. So I went back to the drawing board and searched out ways to try to cut the costs. In September of 2021, I tried to simplify the project and do a prefabbed restroom and have one contractor come in, provide the restroom and do the site work. That also came in a bit high. So this is, this March, we received a grant extension from DNR. And that pushes the extension to June 30th, which is soon. And that little extension allowed us one more opportunity to try to get it right and see if we can get this dialed into a closer number towards the budget. So today I'm here to show you one last restroom design that I feel is more in line with our original budget, along with an approved extension from DNR that would push our project completion date to the end of the year, which is December 31st. And so first thing I want to talk about is that grant extension. It was approved and it includes the scope change, getting everything corrected because the original design had composting bathrooms and green roof and a lot of educational signage all around it. I was able to get all that taken out in the extension. And it will, and I'll show you the actual designs. And it also, I have the extension ready to go. I just need, it'll be on the next meeting, depending on where we land tonight, that extension. All right, so here is the last iteration of the restroom. That picture of the red restroom is the actual model that we're looking at. It's called the CXT Denali. There was a detail sheet that I had shared in the packet, and
Highest trim level there.
I'm sorry.
The highest trim level there. You buy a car.
Beautiful, beautiful fake rock,
Denali.
just beautiful.
But basically, it's a turnkey ADA accessible unit that is constructed off-site. It's delivered on a trailer and dropped on a pre-made pad by a crane. As you can see, it comes with all the necessary accessories that you'd need: paper product dispensers, ADA handrails, the toilet sink, everything you need, the mirrors. And there is, and it's not really pictured here, but there is a janitorial chase that runs down the middle in between the two that's accessed from the backside. So you can store your cleaning supplies, and there's plumbing access and such back there. Any questions on this before I move on?
I think that looks good. Definitely much better than having just a porta potty out there with no running water. I just want to know what was in that $1 million bid, because I think you can build a pretty nice house for $1 million, including putting in a septic field. I think someone was trying to take us to the cleaners on that one.
Yeah, potentially.
How much
It-
is
the-
Living roof on. It was a living roof.
Yeah,
A living roof?
it was a green roof. Yeah, it had living plants on it.
Oh, my goodness.
I think we'd
Well,
be shot. if we
that
approved
definitely is worth the
It was
money.
rather-
How much is this one?
Oh, I'm not done. I was just,
Oh.
I got a lot more to go here.
Oh.
I was just asking questions on just the bathroom itself.
Is this the Denali?
Hey, Carol,
I mean, it's all about the money. It's a good look.
He's
You
trying
know?
to give a Denali level presentation. Give the guy.
All right, so
Tom,
here-
you're always a pleasure. How much is it?
I'm going to detail the site work real quick, and then we will get into the financial impact. So here is the site work that was designed thanks to some help from Public Works. We were able to put a simplified plan together here. As you can see, we've got the building. Here's the driveway that when you pull in, and the parking's here. So here's the existing new ADA asphalt trail. So there's a sidewalk that curls in, and the building will be laid right here where that dark black rectangle is. Right here is the bioswale as part of our grant with DNR. We needed a bioswale as part of the project. And then the septic runs off the side of the building over here to where the red dot is. That's the septic tank. And then the septic field runs out to the north. This bid was released in April, at the end of April, and the bids came in on 5/31. So we do have pricing for everything. We just need some direction on how to move forward. So here's the cost. For all of the site work, the total contract price is $145. But baked into that $145 is some contingency money. $15,000 for miscellaneous, unforeseen things that get hit. And then there's a septic contingency as well. And that kind of derives from the Fulton County application in case they tell us we need a bigger tank than what was spec'd out. So we got a little bit of contingency in there, and that helps us keep the project moving without having to do change orders. The restroom building itself is just under 100,000. The latest quote was 95,130. That's for everything from construction, delivery, dropping it, hooking up, and everything. The electrical connections, we did the electrical separately because we have the on-call electricians. They can come in when it's dropped and just hook it up. So that's another 5. So you're looking at 220, assuming we don't tap into any of the contingency money, and up to 245 if we do. So what's available right now in the restroom account is 128,519, and that includes the grant funds that we haven't received yet, but it is in that account. It's already been encumbered. So there was a lot of money in the original design concepts that were made that took that money down from the 200. So that's why it's not 200 now. How can we bridge that gap? There is a lot in the Providence Park overall capital account that we can just pull from to square it up. And we would need between 91 and 116, depending again, what we hit as we start moving in the project.
So Tom, so our out-of-pocket is really 145 with the contingency. Is that right? Because of the $100,000 grant? Is that right?
Say that again.
So our city out-of-pocket, it's like 145,000, correct?
No, I don't think so.
But we have
No.
28 already in
With
there
contingency, though.
designated, plus the 100, right?
So it looks like with the
We've
grant, the grant's
encumbered about
100.
70,000 already, so.
I
there'd be-
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tom, are you going to address if we do pull some of the other funds, what may be compromised? What some of those other not contingency, but some of the other budget
It's
funds
not, it's not going to jeopardize any initial plans right now. That is money we've been putting in there towards future Providence Park undesignated plans.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. So staff's recommendation would be to move forward with this plan and utilize that grant money that we have still sitting there. Quality restroom facilities would be a huge attraction to that park as well. I mean, there's already a decent amount of foot traffic there. I think with quality restrooms, it would bring more and, could help address some of the other issues tonight too. The alternatives really at this point is forfeit this grant and just keep those portable restrooms out there for a little while. We have gone at this from many different angles, and this is our last opportunity from DNR as well. They're not going to keep extending this with us. I had to beg them to even apply to do this last extension. So those are our alternatives really, is just scrapping it and keeping the portable restrooms out there.
Well, thanks for pushing through. I know it's a lot less than the $1 million living green roof, so appreciate it. Is council okay with the restrooms?
Let's go ahead.
Do we need one at City Park,
Yeah, go for it.
at the other end of the park? Of these?
What park? We don't know.
Right now, with it being an up and back, I would say no.
Way at the other end? At the other
With the
end?
trail being an up and back right now and all the parking being at the club with the restroom already there, I don't think it's necessary down there at this time.
Tom, do we have any idea what our ongoing maintenance costs would be just for restroom cleaning, any other services that might be required to keep it in a pristine condition? Is there a monthly cost?
Between $600 and $800 a month to clean it and keep it stocked with materials and everything. And the power bill is going to be minimal.
What was the rental for the porta potties?
The rentals,
There's
there's two portables there at $130 a month each. So
Oh, okay, so not too different.
About half now.
Yeah, I think
Thank you
we need to do
very
stuff.
much.
Council good with all that?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
We
right,
will
we'll
go
start
ahead.
pushing these through.
Anything?
Good work, Tom.
All right. Well, we will adjourn our council meeting then. That's it.
Thank
Thank you very
Thanks.
much, Tom.
Appreciate it.
Good job.